Path of Exile 3.12 is Heist League, where we're going to be infiltrating enemy bases and trying to get some fat loot, including a ton of currency, interesting new uniques, as well as some changed uniques that we've known for many years. Now I know some of you out there are itching to play a melee build, and when you're gonna play a melee build, there's pretty much only one choice. This is the Impale Cyclone champion. Hey guys, Big Ducks here, and welcome back to the channel. Now, Cyclone needs no introduction. This is the premier melee build. The reason being is that you can move while you're actually DPSing. Not very many other melee abilities can claim that. Now the reason I'm choosing this build in particular as one of my league starters is the fact that this build is very, very easy to gear. All that you need is a Terminus S, which is a couple chaos early on in the league, some random rares just to give you some defenses, and then a 6-link corrupted chess piece, which even in the first week of the league is only 30 to 50 chaos at most. You don't even really need the 6-link, you could just go for a random 5-link and still complete most of the game. The build has excellent clear. It also is really good for bosses. Being able to weave in and out of the boss's attacks constantly while still DPSing makes this one of the best boss killers in the game. You'll see that in the montage. And the other cool thing about this build is if you really do want to invest super heavily into this build and make this like an absolute ridiculous boss killer that can clear everything in the game, absolutely do that if you want to. Now remember guys, if you enjoy my content, make sure to like this video so that more people can see it. And also consider subscribing to the YouTube channel for more content similar to this. Now without further ado, let's take a look at a little bit of the leveling as well as some of the things we accomplished with this build, and then we'll get into the guide. If you're wanting a new chair, I suggest that you really do invest in a good chair. Like, I think that you should be spending, if you're spending a lot of time sitting, you should be spending about equal amounts of money on a chair as you would on a GPU. So if you spend $500 on a GPU, you should be spending $500 on a chair. Like, I think that chair is very, very important for your long-term health. So this fight's actually kind of annoying for Cyclone. Like, you can just like run around him, but the problem is that these rocks that fall from the sky are gonna do a lot of damage. But as long as you just spin around him in a circle, you shouldn't have too many problems. For 1x, you can get a sword with 215 more PDPS than your Terminus S. Are you able to get a 215 PDPS sword more with the same crit chance for 1x? I mean, you're comparing 1x to 1 chaos. Terminus S is a 1 chaos sword. Like, the fact that you're saying that, yeah, you could probably get a better sword for 1 Exalt, I think you're just kind of proving my point, if anything. Once you reach endgame, you should really upgrade from a 1 chaos sword. Why? Do you need to? That's the thing, right? You need to? Like, the idea is that in Harvest right now, you just looked up a sword in the most crafting league imaginable. Do you think that a sword with 215 more physical damage and the same crit and everything else is going to be as easily obtainable in another league besides Harvest? Because if you think that, you don't know what you're talking about. All right, do your thing. Is Reeve extremely bad? Reeve is not great anymore. Reeve is definitely not great anymore. There's so many problems with most of the melee abilities. That's the reason why Cyclone is so common, is because most of the other melee abilities just really don't cut it, you know? Like, that's the main problem. Oh, I actually took that slam to the face. Hog. I didn't even see that he was doing it. Wow, 2 rings. Predicting a Thread of Hope drop? Are we gonna get the final perfect Thread of Hope that we don't have? Is that the drop, gamers? Because we have 3 perfect ones. There's only 1 left. What's the point? I'm running because you force me to run, Cirrus. I would much prefer to just fight you the entire time. But because of you jumping up into the sky like some kind of pansy, I can't actually fight you. I would love to fight you. Come on, Cirrus. I can't see you because of your fucking butt buddy up in the sky. Okay. Can't. Cirrus, you need to move, dude. Like, come on. Like, I hate it when he does that. He gets in like the worst possible positions all the time. So the big thing about this fight is just keeping a track of where he goes, right? You just need to stay near him. As long as you can stay near him and keep an eye on which way he faces, you should be mostly fine in this fight, right? That's 90% of the difficulty. Nope, 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 nope. See, that's the hard part right there. That's it. We actually managed to survive it, which I'm kind of surprised about, but it's just that little itty bit there where you can't figure out where he goes right after that ability. Well, we didn't get the last perfect circly boy, but yeah, that's the only hard part of it. Awakened Unbound Ailments. Is that even good? Alright guys, so this is the Cyclone build. Now, Cyclone, as I said, is a very, very easy ability to play. It's really, really solid for doing pretty much all the content in the game because you can move around while you actually DPS. This build can move very quickly through maps because of its high attack speed. And the cool thing about it is that even if Enduring Cry gets nerfed, even if a bunch of stuff out of the build gets nerfed, it's still Cyclone, it's still really powerful. Now, one thing that people think about is the fact that Cyclone lost its stun immunity. However, this build actually has stun immunity built into it. You cannot be stunned while you have Fortify. So, the nerf to Cyclone did absolutely nothing to this build. We don't even have to take Unwavering Stance. We're still stun immune. All right, so to show you guys a little bit about the build, we are going to be running a tier 16 Volcano map. This is, of course, on Awakener level 8. That means that the unique map boss is going to have 24% more life, a bunch of extra stats on them, and the actual mods of the map are going to be a little bit more dangerous. Now, you're going to see this map is Elemental Weakness, a ton of movement, cast, and attack speed. Monsters gain power charges. It's a relatively dangerous map depending on what's going on. As I said, a tier 16, and then we'll get into it. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. If you know anything about this build, you know that I'm using an Explodey chest. And you're like, Big Ducks, the Explodey chest is going to carry your clear all the way through it, so we'll use a Tabula just for you. So the Tabula is perfectly fine. My resists aren't going to be capped properly, actually, and this is a LE weakness plus faster attacks and such map, but you're gonna see that the clear is still gonna be perfectly fine even without the Explodey chest. Now, the big thing about the Explodey chest, beyond everything else, is really just the fact that it prevents enemies from doing on-death effects. That's kind of the reason why I like it much more than the actual clear help. The clear help is nice, and we of course lose our Explodey chest, and then I spawn the Chaos Conqueror, and our Explodey chest had some of our Chaos Resist on there, so we're probably just going to get randomly one-shot, but we'll just roll with that punch if it happens. Now, the cool thing about this Lion's Roar flask that we have is the fact that while you're actually hitting things, it's going to be dragging the enemies along with you if you don't kill them in one hit. So that means that as you're clearing through the map, any harder to kill enemies will kind of just get pushed along, and you get to keep DPSing them while you push through the map. Now, this is just one of the ways that it makes it easier to clear, but honestly, the build doesn't need too much help with it. This build survives off of just a not even 6-link Terminus S. Our 6-link is actually our chest piece, and that's in the Tabula right now, so you don't need any crazy gear. The most expensive piece of gear that I think this character has on right now, besides my Cinder Swallow urn, is just this ring. You could replace this with any just vulnerability on hit ring. Honestly, I checked it in Path of Building, and the vulnerability hit ring was like 5% of my damage or something like that. I can't remember exactly how much it was, but it wasn't as much as I expected it to be. So you really don't need a lot of gear. You can clear all the way through tier 16 maps, and the coolest thing about this build, I feel, because this is a Cyclone build and because this is a crit build, you can actually push this build quite far with gear if you want to. Now you can do all the content in the game with like some random rares, a 5 Chaos Sword, a Tabula, Devotos. I mean, this isn't that expensive most of the time, and just some random items, right? I mean, my Cluster Jewel isn't even that insane. It's just a random area Cluster Jewel. This is mainly just for clear. I don't have any insane jewels or anything like that. I think I found this one, actually. This one would probably cost you a decent amount early on, but other than that, it's just like some random corrupted jewels. That's got some leech on it. There's not much going on with this build. The cost of it is actually quite low, specifically because of how good this sword is. I don't understand how such a cheap sword can be so good. It's got huge amounts of crit, provides frenzy charges, it provides some mana fixing, it provides really solid DPS. And now that Starforge has kind of been nerfed into the ground, there's not much reason to ever use it anymore. So, I mean, this kind of seems like the new king of unique weapons. Now, when you actually get to a boss, you're going to want to make good use of your Vol Warchief, or Ancestral Warchiefs. They're going to cause you to do a ton more damage, but you can kind of see that I have the boss kind of stuck in a wall here a little bit. But yeah, so you're going to kind of see that I'm getting kind of slapped right now because my chest piece has some of my life and resist on it. But yeah, I mean, I'm losing 100 life, my cold resist, and as well as my chaos resistance, so makes me a little bit less tanky. But you see the strength of the build, you see the fact that we can just spin to win straight through the entire map. It didn't matter that it was a LE weakness with enemies attack and cast and move faster, and they gain power charges and all that kind of good stuff. Didn't matter, we swept through the map, no problem whatsoever. So now that you've seen a little bit about the build, I want to give a brief overview of how this build actually works. And one thing that I'm going to go much more in depth in this video because it is important is that when you're league starting this character, you really need to know how to properly level the character. Without having that information, it's going to be much harder to league start as melee. I want to give that disclaimer here. If you don't follow the steps and the information that I give you pretty well and work on upgrading your character, melee league start is a little bit tougher. However, I'm going to solve all of that for you. But first, let's talk a little bit about the character itself. So the main way that this character works is that this is a Impale build. Now what Impale does is it makes it so that when you hit an enemy, it reflects 10% of that damage for each impaling hit. Now, Impales last for 5 hits that you can see here, or 8 seconds. So to make this a little bit easier, when you impale, each stack of Impale is like a 10% more damage multiplier. So if you have a 100% chance to impale, you can get up to 50% more damage for 5 hits, right? So the cool thing about this ascendancy is that we have this thing called Master of Metal here. And what Master of Metal does is it increases the amount of impales that we can do by 2. It also gives us some chance to impale as well as some added physical damage for each impale on the enemy. So with just Forceful Skewering, this little node right here, Master of Metal, we have a Impale support as well as a Dread Banner. I don't know where my Dread Banner is. There it is. Just between those things, we have a 100% chance to impale. So after 7 hits, we're doing 70% more damage just by having impale, on top of all of the other scaling that this build has. It's just the impale that's really making this build do so much damage. Now, as I said before, I just have some random gear here. I've got a Devotos. We played this with a Tabula. I've got a Terminus Est. It's rolled decently well. This is a pretty good one. Pretty high crit, pretty high percent fizz. Some random gloves with life and resists on them. Life and resists, life and resists. This ring I crafted with harvest stuff. It's pretty good offensive wise, but you don't need it. And it's just some life resist. This has a little bit of fizz damage and crit multi on it, but that shouldn't be too hard to get. You don't need the Cinder Swallow urn. The Lion's Roar is pretty useful, but you don't need any crazy gear or anything like that. The skill tree is pretty straightforward. I've got full leveling trees. And talking about leveling, let's go over some of the abilities and what you should use early on while leveling. Now you can do this a couple different ways. When you first start the game, your starting ability can be mostly anything. However, I tend to like to level this as a two-handed build and just go into some of the two-handed points early on. This tree needs some updating, and I'm going to do that in the path of building. So if you're interested in seeing the most up-to-date version of this build, make sure that you go down into the description and check the path of building. I will be updating these builds as we get patch notes, as we get more information about Heist League, all of that. It will be fully up to date, so go check it out down there. Now, as I said, this build does need a little bit of updating, which I've done there, so I do like to get some two-handed nodes very early on. I personally like to start with Ground Slam. You're gonna get this at level 1 as soon as you enter town. Now, the reason that I like Ground Slam is just because it has a very wide radius. It does really good damage. It's very easy to start with. You can use an axe, a mace, a scepter, a staff, or unarmed. Axes are typically the best weapons for leveling up. I know that the build does eventually go swords, but when you swap over to Blade Storm later, that's when you can swap into a sword. You're gonna level with Ground Slam all the way until 28. Now, in the meantime, you're going to be picking up War Banner at level 4. The cool thing about War Banner is it gives you adrenaline when you place the banner down. This is really good for taking out like bosses and such. It's going to heal you up, cause you to do a bunch more damage. You can just plant the banner right as you're killing the boss. At level 10, you're going to get access to Leap Slam and Enduring Cry. Now, Enduring Cry is important, and this may be nerfed, but we'll have to see. As I said, it'll be updated in the Pastebin. But Enduring Cry is important for keeping you alive, especially early on. Now, you aren't going to beeline for this, but you'll probably get it in the first 30 or 40 levels. Call Arms is pretty strong. We'll see if that survives all of the nerfs. Now, that makes Enduring Cry quite strong. It gives you endurance charges. It gives you a small boost of health regeneration. At level 16, you're going to get access to Flesh and Stone. Now, the important thing to know about Flesh and Stone is that it says nearby enemies are maimed while in Blood Stance. And it says enemies maimed by this skill take 13% increased physical damage. Now, the cool thing is that this ability maims, right? So you, if I can find it, can actually link Flesh and Stone with the maim support. And it says enemies maimed by supported skills take 14% increased physical damage. So just by adding this in, it costs a little tiny bit more mana, and it's going to cause them to take an additional 14% more damage. So that's pretty cool. Now, beyond that, when you do get up to around, I would say, probably around level 40, after you've done your first Ascendancy and you're switching over to Blade Storm and things are going a little bit better, you're going to be switching over to Impale. And at that point, when you do switch over to Impale, you are going to want to switch over to Dread Banner. This is going to be the final 20% that you need. So when you do get Master of Metal, which you get first, and you do pick up this Forceful Skewering, probably around like level 40 or level 50-ish, this is around when you're going to want to swap over to Impale. You're going to want to make sure that you use the Impale support in your 4-link. You should be looking for a 4-link, and you'll be using Dread Banner, the Impale support, Master of Metal, and Forceful Skewering. All of that together will provide you the 100% chance to Impale. And when you hit 28, you've got a choice here. You can go Cyclone. I don't recommend it. I don't think that Cyclone is actually good for leveling. I think this is much better once you get to maps, once you've got some more AoE and some more movement speed and some more attack speed. Cyclone will be much better then. Until then, I suggest that you use Bladestorm. Now, I will just pop in Bladestorm here so you can kind of see how it works, but Bladestorm puts a little circle on the ground of damage, right? Now, Bladestorm itself, you can actually swap between your auras of the Flesh and Stone aura to get 2 different kinds of Bladestorm. Now, when you've got the Sand Bladestorm, it's going to cause you to move faster, and it's going to kind of move along with you as you cast it. However, I think that the Blood Bladestorm is much, much better. The Blood Bladestorm stays in place and it does significantly more damage, and it causes you to have more attack speed while you're actually in the Bladestorm. You can see how fast I can attack here, whereas when I swap over to Sand, it's definitely not as fast. Still fast, but not as fast. You can see here that it says we gain 10% more attack speed while you're in a Blood Bladestorm. So it's going to cause you to do a little bit more damage. Now this ability is really solid. I think that it's much better for leveling than Cyclone, and I do suggest that you do it. Other thing that I talked about earlier, I said that you really are going to need to upgrade your gear consistently. And I'm going to show you how to do that. The first thing that you need to know about leveling any melee character is there is a vendor recipe. And this vendor recipe is insanely important, and you need to know how to use it, because if you don't, leveling a melee character is going to be terrible. So what you need to have is you need to have a Rustic Sash, and it can be blue, it can be yellow, but that's it. If you have a blue Rustic Sash, it's going to give you a decent roll, and if you have a yellow Rustic Sash, it's going to give you a better roll. So I'm going to show you here, if you do manage to get a yellow Rustic Sash, right? So we got this random Rustic Sash. You take that, plus a single Blacksmith's Whetstone, and any weapon that you want to turn into a physical damage weapon. So what that means is, say we're leveling and you're like, okay, I need to upgrade my axe and I want to get this wood splitter, right? It's a good base, it has pretty decent attack speed, it's an upgrade over the Jade Chopper, upgrade over here. Pretty good attack speed, good base physical damage, you want to use this one, right? So what you're going to do is that later on, when you have a majority of these, when you have a ton of Blacksmith's Whetstones, you're going to quality this up, and then you're going to take it to any vendor, and then you're going to sell these 3 items, and it's going to provide you axe or sword or mace or whatever weapon that you used with a percentage fizz damage roll. This one actually rolled perfectly. So then what you do after you've got this, you can either have this as is and just upgrade these over time, or once you get the crafts for them, you can actually go to your hideout. And the one that I suggest that you do most of the time is going to be just attack speed, because you can just straight craft attack speed on here, right? So you're obviously not gonna be able to do that one, but you'll be able to do this low level one. Keep in mind of the eye level of the crafts themselves so you know what level it's going to be. You can craft attack speed on here if you want to. Alternatively, something else that you can do is you can augment it. You can see what you get. We ended up getting accuracy. If you have a regal, you can regal it, and then from there you can craft flat fizz. Now, you're probably not going to be able to do this very, very early on, but if you can craft this flat fizz plus the physical damage on it, you're going to have a ridiculous leveling weapon. Do this whenever it seems like your damage is kind of falling off, and you'll feel much, much better. Now, beyond that, you should really be focusing on finding 3 links and 4 links as you're leveling up. And one of the best ways to do that is with the vendor. Now, every time that you level up, this vendor's items are going to change. You're gonna see there's a bunch of random items in here. You're gonna be looking for things like movement speed boots. You're gonna be looking for things like 3 links or 4 links with the proper colors. We can see here there are no runner's boots. Runner's boots are the movement speed boots that you're looking for early on. You're going to be looking for 3 links and 4 links. You can buy these chromatic items if you want, but I really don't think that they're worthwhile. You can find all the way up to 6 links from vendors, and each vendor has different items. When you start getting into Act 2, Act 3, Act 4, it's generally around Act 3 or Act 4 where you can start finding 4 links. If you do get unlucky and you don't get any 4 links whatsoever, that's what happened to me, it is gonna feel a little rough. So make sure to look out for those 4 links. And the last thing that I want to make sure that you're aware of is that very early on into the game, from Act 2, when you save Helena and you get your hideout and you start unlocking some of these crafts, use this crafting bench to solve your resist problems early on. You can type in resist up here, and these resists can be used at level 12, okay? So if you have some random piece of gear, even a weapon, it doesn't matter. Say you really need fire resist, just craft fire resist on it. You can craft it on every piece of your gear. It doesn't matter what it is, boots, chest piece, weapon, rings, belt, gloves, helmet, necklace, anything, right? You can craft resists on them. Make sure that you get your resist taken care of. It's a very easy way to make yourself safe. So we're gonna jump into the path of building for a little bit. I just wanna go over a couple of things. I want to ask you guys to really go and download Path of Building, the community fork. You can find a link to that down in the description of this video, as well as a Pastebin link. I really do keep these things up to date, and I put a ton of information into them. So if you need more information about the build, the best way that you can get it is through that Path of Building. If you really need help beyond that, you can try asking down in the comments, but the best way to do it is to join my Discord, link down below in the description as well. I'm over there. I've got a ton of helpful community members and moderators that are happy to help people with their builds, especially if you've got issues with my builds. And if you just have any questions or you want to come hang out with your boy, feel free to come and hang out in the Discord. So let's jump over into the Path of Building. So there's only really a couple of things that I want to go over here in the Path of Building, because I really would like you to download it and install it and try checking this out, because it's an awesome program that will improve your ability to play PoE massively just by being able to see what's worthwhile. So what I want you to know is that when you load into Path of Building, it's going to look like this. You're going to hit New, you're going to hit Import, and you're going to go down here where it says Import from Pastebin. Paste the Pastebin link that's down in the description right now into that box. Paste it into there, you hit import, and it's going to load you directly up into my Impale Cyclone champion, okay? You're going to have multiple leveling trees. There's leveling trees 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the final endgame tree, okay? Follow these leveling trees, do what they say here, make sure you just go through these points naturally, pick up life and damage when you need them, jump to the next one. It also shows you which ascendancies you should be picking first, second, third, and also fourth. It's got all kinds of skills that shows you the type of auras that you should be using, when you should be changing them around, what movement skills to use, what abilities to level with, and when to swap them out and when to swap the gems out. It also does have the endgame leveling abilities. Beyond that, it's got multiple leveling sets. This is the budget gear set. So you can see with the budget gear set, meaning just this is a random belly of the beast, some just items with resists and life and some stats. There's nothing special here. And some flasks. This doesn't even have the Cinder Swallow flask or anything else crazy. We're doing 3 million DPS with Impale. It's a really easy budget build. I mean, if you went up here all the way into the insane expensive version of the build with all kinds of crazy items, you can see we're doing like 15 million DPS with this build. And that is even without having the power charges on, which you would have in the insane version of the build, 16 million in the build. So check through these gear sets. These are my items that I use to clear everything in the game. I killed all of the bosses. I had pretty much no issue with them. So go download the Path of Building. I've got tons of notes in here. There's a frequently asked questions section with all kinds of information. I've got leveling information, playing the build, my final thoughts about it. There's all kinds of good stuff in here. To go download the Path of Building. I can't really say it many more times than that. All right, guys, so if you're looking for a melee build, this is the one that I suggest that you use. Cyclone's a really solid starter early on. It's really easy to do a ton of damage, and the weapon is super cheap. Can't really get better than that now, can you? Now, as I said before, if you have questions, check out the comments, check out the description, check out the notes in the Path of Building, and if none of that works, make sure that you go and join my Discord and come ask in there. It's the only way that you're really going to be able to get help beyond all of the stuff that I've provided. I try to give you as much as I possibly can. So remember, if you enjoy my content, like this video so that more people can see it. Subscribe to the YouTube channel for more content similar to this, and stay safe out there in raid class, and I'll see you guys in Heist League.